It's my pleasure now to introduce you to our next speaker, and that's Dr. Nicola Byrom. Nicola is an academic psychologist working at Oxford University in the UK, where she combines teaching with research into risk and resilience for mental health, for students with mental health difficulties. She's founded Student Minds, the UK's student mental health charity, following her own experience with mental health difficulties. And having some difficulties as a teenager, she was surprised to learn how difficult it was to talk about mental health in university. Through her work with Student Minds, Nicola has been a passionate advocate for peer support with the aim of building knowledge, skills, and confidence when talking about mental health for all. Earlier this year, she received the Queen's Young Leader Award for recognition of her contribution to improving student mental health. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I get started, there was a clicker. I need that. Thank you. Cool. Brilliant. Good morning, everyone. I just want to say before I start my talk that I have just been so incredibly inspired and moved by all of you here and by all of the talks that I've heard so far. I just wish this movement had got started 20 years earlier and you'd been here for me when I was a young teenager. So I want to talk a little bit about mental health in higher education. And let me just start by asking you, how many of you here went to university or college or are at university or college? Could I ask you to pop your hands up? I thought so. There's a fair few of you. Okay, so you guys then can answer for me a question. Were these the best years of your life? Did you have the best time ever? Sort of, a bit, okay, not so convinced. And I'm not surprised by that. I'd be really, really surprised if you were all resoundingly saying, yes, these were amazing years, these were the best times of my life, because I think it's a bit of propaganda. And what really worries me is I think that expectation of university to be the best years of your life is really setting our students up for a fall. Because university is a really challenging environment. It's full of new beginnings, new responsibilities, new independence, new friends, new stresses. And it's also a time of uncertainty, where students have the opportunity to begin to think about shaping their future, but they have so little track record on which to base their confidence. So all of these problems cause challenges for student mental health. And in the UK, at least, we also have huge challenges in actually providing support for students. So students are right at the cusp of that switch between child and adolescent mental health services and adult mental health services, which in the UK is aggravated further by the fact that students move away from home for their studies. So they're living in a new part of the UK. They're also a transient population, moving between university where they're studying and home. And that move back and forth creates real challenges for our existing mental health services, both in terms of accessing care and in maintaining continuity of care. So I started Student Minds with the goal to try and promote and provide a framework within which to build better mental health in this really challenging environment. And I want to talk a little bit today about Student Minds, but I also want to start just by sharing some of my own experiences, which I found has shaped so much of my motivation for setting up Student Minds. So I started university in 2006, and as Ed has told you already, I was no stranger to mental health difficulties. I'd had a long experience of problems through my teenage years. I'd experienced anxiety and depression and eating difficulties. But I was in a really good place when I moved to university. I thought I was doing really well. And while I kept talking to my friends about my mental health, I thought that I could use the move to university to start afresh, to turn over a new leaf. So like most university students, I didn't talk about my mental health when I was meeting all of those new friends. And I suppose if I threw it out to you, I don't suppose you would either. This plan of mine worked quite well to start with, but you can probably see where it ended up. After a while, I felt very alone with my mental health story. Starting afresh was lonely. I struggled with some of the stresses of university exams, and I placed an awful lot of pressure on myself to succeed. I experienced panic attacks, and I slipped back into old habits and found myself self-harming. I knew that I was struggling, but I kept my struggles to myself. I think in part that was denial, and in part it was a lack of ability to articulate what was wrong. I really honestly don't think I knew what was wrong. On a walk to university one morning, my housemate found the courage to step outside her own comfort zone. She simply said to me, "You're not doing okay. Can I help?" For her, that had been something really difficult to say because she was really nervous. She knew that she didn't know a lot about mental health, and she didn't know what she could or should be doing. But for me, those small few words were all I needed. I needed a reality check, and I needed someone to start the conversation. So as I started talking, something quite surprising happened. Others spoke to me about their own struggles. And I realized that I'd been feeling very alone amongst many other students who were feeling equally alone. And I found that so strange. It got me wondering, why was there no forum, no group, no structure, no opportunity to talk? And I really felt that there needed to be that structure that said, it's okay to talk. We can talk about this. So in 2009, I set up Student Minds with the objective of encouraging students to talk about mental health. I wanted to create that opportunity for conversation. If we do this, yeah. Oh, I missed that one, sorry. There we go. So Student Minds is a national youth initiative. I have 7 staff members, but I have a network of over 250 students and recent university graduates. Since the start, we've been training students to facilitate safe spaces, to create time and opportunity to talk. And unlike training peer mentors, where we'd be providing one-on-one support, I've always wanted to try and create a group environment, an opportunity to bring people together who are experiencing the same experiences, so that they can be there for each other, to say to each other quite simply, you're not alone, we're not doing this together. Together we can get through this. I've often used my own experiences to think about the challenges for student mental health. I was well when I arrived at university. So why did I feel so alone? Why did I struggle in silence? Why didn't I talk about my mental health? And the reality is I did. When I started having panic attacks, I went to see the university counselling service. And the session reminded me that I've been through therapy before. Indeed, I'd had an amazing therapist when I was a teenager. And it made me think, I have the skills and knowledge to look after my own mental health. I could be doing this for myself. I went to see my GP, and he told me that I needed to take a break from my studies, that I should put my books away for a while. And he was right. A break really helped. But what I really needed couldn't be provided by professionals. If I drew on Tony's talk from yesterday, I really needed a whole community approach. I really needed to feel less alone. I wanted to be able to say, I'm feeling worried about my future. I'm feeling really stressed with my work. I'm not doing a good job of looking after myself. I wanted to be able to say this without feeling dramatic. I wished I could say this and know that my peers would respond calmly and supportively. And the irony, of course, was that when I did start talking, my peers did respond calmly and supportively. I know, though, that I wasn't alone. in thinking that the worst would happen when I opened up about my mental health. Research that we've done at Student Minds indicates that students still feel that stigma and a fear of being judged are some of the biggest challenges facing student mental health. And I believe that peer support might just be the key to reducing that stigma. At Student Minds, I've really hoped that we can try and normalize conversation about mental health, to make it easier to say, I'm feeling worried, I'm really stressed, I'm not doing so well. So to head off in this direction, we've used both formal and informal models of peer support. And I just want to share some thoughts on these. Because listening to Marianne Davis's talk yesterday, I heard her echo an experience that I've had so many times. It's really been an enormous challenge at times to get clinicians behind peer support. It's often felt like a battle. So we've been running support groups for students with eating difficulties for 5 years now, with the primary objective of bringing students together with similar experiences to reduce their sense of isolation. Our groups have been able to say, you're not alone. There is hope. We can recover together. We train, support, and supervise students to facilitate these groups. And we've always focused on motivational interviewing as a technique to help our groups build space to maintain motivation for recovery. So reflecting on Marianne Davis's comments yesterday, I'd like to say that we've always had support for this work from the Institute of Psychiatry and from one of our most important trustees, Professor Janet Treasure, who's an expert in the field of eating disorders. We've also had enormous support from students. So I should say at this point that Student Minds was an enormous accident. It really wasn't supposed to grow into a big charity. But when I threw the idea out into the world, students ate it up. And it's been driven forward ever since by the enormous student energy to get talking about mental health. On the ground at universities, though, we've had really quite a mixed reaction from clinicians working on campus. So at some campuses, we've had a complete rejection of the idea of peer support, and we haven't been able to get projects up and running there because it hasn't felt like the right time or the right place to be doing it. On some campuses, professionals have kind of given us their blessing, but said, this is student work, leave it to the Students' Union, it's not really part of our work. At other campuses, I think we're starting to see something really exciting, with the clinicians and professionals on campus saying, yeah, let's bring this in-house, let's work out how we can use peer support to extend our own services and reach more students. I want to say a little bit about our most recent project, which is Positive Minds, which we've piloted over the last few years. It's a 6-part peer-led course for mild depression based around the principles of behavioral activation. And it's a course that we've developed with Dr. Denise Meyer at Students Against Depression. I found this course really exciting because it is so simple. We're simply bringing students together to talk about how they manage stress. We've also been able to train a lot of students with personal experience of mental health difficulties to run this program. And so far that seems to be working really, really well. The small-scale evaluation that we've been able to run so far has shown that this can have a real tangible impact upon student mental health. And the program's now been adopted by 8 new universities. We are, of course, not the first, I should hasten to add, to do peer support work and in a group format. But we have had to reinvent the concept to function on a university campus. And I'd urge any of you, if I've managed to convince you to do work around peer support, to think really carefully, if you're going to be working on a university campus, about how you strengthen the existing infrastructure and work with the services that are already there so that you build something that's sustainable and can last for the long term. I want to say a little bit about the informal peer support. We've run programs at Student Minds like the Look After Your Mate campaign and Supporting Supporters to build skills, knowledge and confidence so that students feel equipped to support their friends. Why is this so important? Well, I don't think the numbers about student mental health add up. We know that in a year about 25% of university students are going to experience difficulties. And in contrast, in the UK, research completed by the Equality Challenge Unit shows us that still only about 1% are disclosing their mental health difficulties to their university. Thankfully, considerably more are seeing their university counselling services. Exact numbers vary dramatically, but my back of the envelope calculations suggest that maybe about 25% of those that are struggling are seeking support from their counselling service. This leaves a big gap. Who's filling that gap? Well, I think friends are. We know that 3 out of 4 students will turn to their friends for support for their mental health. And research illustrates that most students that are struggling use friends as their main source of support. I want to end by saying that I often hear concerns about the impact of mental health difficulties on friends. There's sometimes a desire among professionals to encourage friends to do more signposting and less supporting, to make use of the professional services that exist. I understand the sentiment, and at times professionals are invaluable, but do we really think professional services can replace the continuous, day in, day out support that friends provide? Can professional services make people feel less alone? Can they normalize the experience of mental health difficulties? Can they be there every day? So while I'd absolutely encourage students to seek support when necessary, I think we need to start to recognize how vital peer support is. That said, I wanted just to throw in one slide with a graph and say that the concern about the impact on friends is realistic and valid. Caring takes a toll. Research with families has shown a substantive emotional and mental health cost of caring for someone that's struggling. And our own research with students shows a staggeringly similar pattern. So what we've got up here, the lines in orange show you ratings on an experience of caregiving scale that were conducted with families supporting a child with an eating difficulty. And the lines in green show you our data with students, from a sample of 80 students that were supporting a friend through mental health difficulties. And it's staggeringly similar. Interestingly, research with families has attributed distress experience to the perceived lack of skills and knowledge and the real lack of confidence. So I'd return to my original point and say that we need to be doing more to equip young people to have the skills, confidence and knowledge to talk about their mental health and to talk about their friends' mental health. I just want to end by saying a huge thank you to you all for listening and to all of my supporters at Student Minds and for my fantastic team back in the UK. Thank you.